Don't come to the wedding. My mom texted. You and your kids just make things awkward. My sister replied with a laughing emoji. I texted back, then you won't need my card for the venue. The group chat erupted in laughter, completely clueless about what was about to happen next. Can you imagine getting a text message from your own sister, just weeks before her wedding, saying you and your kids are awkward and shouldn't come because they want a perfect day? And then, they still expect you to pay for it? That's exactly what happened to me, Randy, a single mom to two amazing kids, and it shattered my entire world. Growing up in our quiet, middle-class suburb, I always knew my place in the family. My mom, Diane, was a master of appearances, obsessed with what the neighbors thought. Our house, our clothes, our family photos, all picture perfect, like something out of a magazine. But behind that polished facade was a deeply complicated dynamic of favoritism and impossible standards. Natalie, my sister, 3 years younger, was Mom's golden child. Blonde hair, petite, she fit my mother's ideal of feminine beauty effortlessly. Cheer captain, homecoming queen, business degree, Natalie ticked every box. I, on the other hand, I was the designated black sheep. Wild, curly hair, preferred sketch pads to pom-poms, and questioned authority in ways that mortified my status-conscious mother. By 16, I knew I wanted a creative career, a hobby Mom scoffed at. When I said graphic design, she actually wept at the dinner table, lamenting my wasted potential, while Natalie sympathetically patted her hand. The chasm between us only deepened when I got pregnant with Tyler at 24. My relationship with his father had ended months before I found out. When I told my family, Mom's first words weren't, "Are you okay?" or "How can I help?" No, they were, "But what will people think?" Natalie, fresh off her MBA, looked at me with a mix of pity and superiority that burned worse than Mom's outright disappointment. "Oh, Randy," she'd sighed. "How are you going to manage a baby? You can barely manage yourself." Mom just nodded along. Despite their complete lack of support, I finished my degree pregnant, gave birth to Tyler between final exams, and graduated 3 weeks later with my newborn in my arms and no family in the audience. Those early years were brutally hard. I worked freelance design jobs, nursing with one hand, typing with the other, surviving on fumes. My mother's rare visits felt more like inspections, filled with criticism about everything from my chosen formula to my secondhand furniture. "You should have thought about all this before getting pregnant," she'd say, every time I mentioned being tired. Her help always came with strings, making it clear I was a burden, an embarrassment. For years later, I met David. Kind, creative. For 2 years, I thought we'd build a life. Emma was a beautiful surprise, initially bringing us closer. But by the time Emma turned 2, David's musician career meant irregular income and long absences. He moved to LA, promising to stay involved, but those promises faded into occasional calls and missed child support. So, there I was at 28, a single mom of 2 amazing, energetic kids, making it work through sheer grit and a growing reputation as a reliable graphic designer. I built a home business, letting me be there for school pickups, then working late after the kids were asleep. Family gatherings? Oh, they were exercises in endurance. Mom would fawn over Natalie's career and dating life, then make pointed comments about my kids' behavior or my appearance. "Randy, you might want to try that new diet," she'd announce across the Thanksgiving table. "Can't you get Tyler to sit still for 5 minutes?" Natalie was never so fidgety. The comparisons were endless, always unfavorable. Natalie's trendy apartment versus my modest rental. Natalie's designer clothes versus my practical momwear. Natalie's New York business trips versus my rare trips to the local amusement park with the kids. The worst part was watching my children absorb this. Tyler, so perceptive, started withdrawing around Grandma and Aunt Natalie. Emma, naturally bubbly, would try harder for their approval, only to be corrected for being too loud or too messy. Still, I persisted. I brought them to Sunday dinners, remembered everyone's birthdays with thoughtful, handmade gifts, usually met with polite, underwhelming thanks. I even hosted holidays when I could afford it, enduring Mom subtly rearranging my decorations and not so subtly improving my cooking. Family is family, I'd tell myself. The kids deserve to know their relatives, even if those relatives are deeply flawed. Then came the dinner 6 months ago. Natalie announced her engagement to James, the son of Harold Wilson, owner of the county's biggest real estate development company. My mother practically vibrated with excitement, already envisioning the social climbing. Just think, Diane, James's mother, Eleanor, had apparently said, "Our grandchildren will have the best of everything." I watched my mother's eyes slide to Tyler and Emma, quietly playing cards, and I knew exactly what she was thinking. In her mind, they weren't part of that grandchildren equation. They were the complications, the imperfect extensions of her less-than-perfect daughter. As everyone toasted, I smiled, offered congratulations, and sensed this wedding would be another battleground in our family's long war of appearances versus reality. To my surprise, the initial planning included me. "Randy, we're having a preliminary wedding planning lunch on Saturday," Mom called. "Natalie would like you to be there." Her tone implied a great honor. "Eleanor Wilson will be joining us, so please wear something appropriate." That pause before appropriate spoke volumes, but I chose optimism. Maybe this would bring us closer. I arrived at the upscale restaurant 7 minutes late. Emma had a cold, and I'd scrambled for a babysitter. Mom's tight smile told me those 7 minutes were noted as another failure. Eleanor Wilson was exactly as I'd imagined. Expensively dressed, perfectly coiffed, radiating old money confidence. She assessed me with a glance that took in everything from my scuffed flats to my frizzy hair. "This is Diane's older daughter, Randy," Natalie introduced, waving her newly manicured hand, the massive diamond catching the light. "She does some kind of computer art or something." "I'm a graphic designer," I gently corrected, extending my hand to Eleanor. "Lovely to meet you. Congratulations on your son's engagement." The lunch was a detailed discussion of venues and guest lists. Every suggestion I made was politely acknowledged, then immediately dismissed. "What about incorporating some personal elements into the invitations?" I ventured. "I'd be happy to design something custom." "Oh, that's so sweet," Eleanor patted my hand. "But we've already contacted Harringtons. They've done all the society weddings for generations. Very exclusive." Mom beamed. Natalie nodded enthusiastically. I took a long sip of water, swallowing my offer along with my pride. As weeks passed, my involvement decreased. I'd get texts about decisions already made, framed as updates, not invitations for input. The only area my participation seemed desired was financial. "We found the perfect venue," Mom announced on a rare call. "The Grand Pavilion at Lakeside Gardens. Stunning. But with all the extras Natalie deserves, it's running a bit high." The careful pause. "I don't suppose you could contribute anything? For your sister's special day?" Despite my tight finances, I offered $5,000 for the venue. It meant dipping into my emergency fund, postponing home repairs, but I wanted to show support. Mom's relieved thanks and promises of future involvement seemed worth it. Shortly after, Tyler and Emma bounded into the kitchen, faces alight. "Aunt Natalie called," Tyler announced. "She asked if I want to be a junior groomsman, and Emma gets to be a flower girl." My heart warmed. Maybe things were turning around. Maybe my contribution secured their places, proving we were truly included. That weekend, we went shopping. My mother insisted on joining, claiming her expert eye was needed. The trip quickly became a stress fest. She criticized Emma's hair. "Couldn't you at least have braided it properly?" And Tyler's posture. "Stand up straight. For goodness sake. You look like a hooligan." When Emma accidentally knocked over a mannequin, Mom's face went rigid. "This is precisely why children need proper discipline," she hissed. "How are they going to behave at an elegant wedding if they can't even control themselves in a department store?" Before I could defend my kids, I overheard her in the hallway, voice low but clear. "Yes, Natalie, we're trying on things now." "I know. Yes, it's exactly what we feared. The children are completely wild, and Randy just lets them run amok. I understand your concerns. Yes, it might complicate things having them in the wedding party. We'll discuss it more later." My stomach clenched. They were reevaluating my children, not as beloved family members, but as liabilities. Over the next weeks, I tried to connect with Natalie. Texts, calls, coffee invitations, always an excuse. Swamped. Tastings, meeting with the planner. Then came the bridal shower. I knew nothing about it until I saw photos on social media. Cousins, aunts, my mother, even childhood neighbors. All there, champagne glasses raised. The caption, "Showering our beautiful bride with love #Natalie and James #perfect pair." I stared for hours, searching for any sign my absence was noticed. None. They looked perfectly happy, perfectly complete without me. Around the same time, my Aunt Susan told me James's parents had hosted a formal dinner to meet all of Natalie's family. All of them, apparently, except me and my children. When I casually mentioned this to Mom, she brushed it off. It was very last minute, very small, just immediate family. Immediate family. The words hung in the air, their meaning painfully clear. In their minds, I'd been reclassified. Extended family, at best. Or perhaps no family at all. Rumors started reaching me. Cousin Beth mentioned Mom saying I was too busy for wedding activities. Uncle Robert asked if I'd opted out because I was uncomfortable with formal events. Finally, after weeks of evasion, I directly asked Natalie, "So, what exactly am I doing for the ceremony? Is there a specific dress color? Are Tyler and Emma still in the wedding party? I need to make sure their outfits are ready." Her response was vague, non-committal. "We're still figuring out some details. The wedding party is getting kind of large, so we might need to make some adjustments. I'll let you know." I hung up with a sinking feeling. Adjustments meant erasing my family from the picture entirely. Still, I clung to hope. Surely, my own mother and sister wouldn't completely exclude us, especially after my financial contribution. I was wrong. The message arrived on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks before the wedding. I was in the kitchen, making breakfast. My phone buzzed with family group chat notifications. Mom had created it to keep everyone in the loop, but mostly it just showcased Natalie's princess treatment. That morning, it started innocently. Photos of floral arrangements. "Everything is coming together beautifully," Mom wrote. Natalie chimed in. "I can't believe it's only 3 weeks away." Then, Mom's next text stopped me cold. "Randy, we think it's best if you don't come to the wedding. You and your kids just make things awkward, and we want this day to be perfect for Natalie." I froze. Spatula in hand, eggs sizzling on the stove. Before I could process it, Natalie responded, a laughing emoji, and Mom's right. No offense, but James's family is really classy. The phone nearly slipped from my numb fingers. I shut off the stove mechanically, my mind racing. A terrible joke? But more messages appeared. "Mom again. It's nothing personal, Randy. It's just that the Wilsons have certain expectations about the type of event this will be. Children who aren't properly behaved would be a distraction. Natalie. Plus, you always look so stressed and tired in photos. This wedding is going to be in all the local magazines." And then, the kicker from Mom. "We still appreciate the venue contribution, of course." That was very generous. I felt like I'd been physically struck. The kitchen wobbled. Tears blurred my vision. A small voice broke through my shock. "Mom, the eggs are burning." "Mom, are you okay? You're crying." Tyler stood beside me, his 10-year-old face creased with concern. Emma, behind him, arranged her stuffed animals, blissfully unaware. I wiped my eyes, forced a smile. "I'm fine, buddy. Just got something in my eye. Thanks for telling me about the eggs. Let's make some new ones." As I cracked fresh eggs with trembling hands, shock transformed into something else. A deep, burning anger. How dare they treat my children this way? How dare they act like we were embarrassing accessories, not family? I picked up my phone. I typed, fighting to keep my tone controlled and dignified despite the rage and hurt. "Then you won't need my card for the venue." Simple, direct, and apparently hilarious to my family. Natalie immediately responded with another laughing emoji. "Good one, sis, but seriously, the venue deposit is non-refundable, so thanks for that." Mom added, "Don't be dramatic, Randy. This is about what's best for your sister's special day." Then my father, silent until now. "Your mother's right, Randy. Sometimes it's better to step back. No need to make this about you." More messages flooded in from other family members who'd been silently watching this public execution of my dignity. "Randy, dear, perhaps this is for the best," Aunt Patty chimed. "Remember Tom and Sally's anniversary party when Tyler knocked over the ice sculpture? Uncle Dave, some events just aren't kid-friendly. Nothing personal. Cousin Beth, I think what they're trying to say is more intimate ceremony equals more elegant. You understand, right?" With each message, the knot in my stomach tightened. These people had known me my entire life, and not one of them was standing up for me. Not one was questioning the casual cruelty of excluding family from a family celebration. I set my phone face down as it continued to buzz. "Time for breakfast, guys." I called, determined not to let them see how shaken I was. Tyler kept shooting concerned glances. At 10, he sensed adult problems, but was too young to fully understand. Emma chatted happily about a field trip, periodically patting my hand. "Are you sad, Mommy?" she finally asked. "Your eyes look rainy." "I'm just having a grown-up problem, sweetie," I answered, stroking her hair. "Nothing for you to worry about." But after I dropped them at school, I sat in my car in the parking lot and finally broke down. Huge, racking sobs tore through me as the full weight of the rejection settled. It wasn't just about a wedding invitation. It was years of being treated as lesser, of watching my children judged, of trying so hard to connect with people who fundamentally didn't respect me. When I returned home, my phone showed 17 new messages. I silenced the conversation without reading them. Whatever additional barbs they'd thrown would have to wait. I had client work. That evening, after the kids were in bed, I finally looked. Most were variations of, "You're overreacting. You're selfish. Think of Natalie's happiness." The chat had moved on to discussing who would sit at the table originally reserved for me. I curled up on the sofa, wrapped in my grandmother's quilt, and cried until I had no tears left. Grandma, she'd been different. She celebrated my creativity, defended my choices, loved my children without reservation. "Family is about acceptance, not perfection," she used to say. If she were alive, she would have been appalled. As midnight approached, I sat at my kitchen table, processing not just today's events, but years of subtle mistreatment. The wedding exclusion wasn't an anomaly. It was the most blatant expression of how Mom and Natalie truly saw us. The realization was both painful and strangely liberating. For years, I'd chased approval I'd never receive, made excuses for inexcusable behavior, and exposed my children to people who saw them as inconveniences. "No more," I whispered to my empty kitchen. "This stops now." The next morning, after school drop-off, I called Zoe, my best friend since college. "They did what?" Zoe exploded after I recounted the text exchange. "Oh my God, Randy, that's beyond cruel. That's psychological warfare." Hearing my own thoughts validated by someone I trusted solidified my resolve. This wasn't a miscommunication. It was a pattern. "I don't know why I'm even surprised," I said, my voice steadier than expected. "Remember Emma's 5th birthday, when Mom showed up with a cake because mine wasn't presentable enough? Or when your sister scheduled her housewarming party on the same day as Tyler's school play, then got mad you chose his performance over her new throw pillows," Zoe added. We unearthed more memories, each a puzzle piece I'd finally allowed myself to see. "I think I've been gaslighting myself," I admitted. "Making excuses, telling myself it wasn't that bad." "That's what happens," Zoe replied gently. "You normalize it. But Randy, there is nothing normal about what they're doing. It's toxic, and you and your kids deserve so much better." After our call, a strange calm settled over me, like the eye of an emotional hurricane. The initial shock had passed, replaced by a clear, cold anger. But I knew the real emotional processing was still to come. That clarity was shattered when Tyler came home from school. Red-rimmed eyes, a defensive hunch to his shoulders that I knew too well. "What happened, buddy?" I asked. He was quiet for a long moment. "Jake said we're not going to Aunt Natalie's wedding anymore." Jake was Natalie's 10-year-old stepson. "He said it's because we don't know how to act right, and his grandma doesn't want us there." My heart broke all over again, this time for my son. "Tyler, did Jake say that at school? In front of other kids?" He nodded, a single tear escaping. "He told everyone during lunch. He said his dad is paying for a super fancy wedding and they don't want it ruined." I took a deep breath, trying to contain the fresh wave of anger. "Tyler, look at me. What Jake said isn't true. The reason we're not going to the wedding has nothing to do with you or your behavior. It's about grown-up problems between me, Grandma, and Aunt Natalie." "Is it because we're not rich like Jake's family?" he asked, with the devastating directness of children. "No, honey. It's because sometimes adults make bad choices that hurt other people's feelings. And when that happens, we need to set boundaries." "What are boundaries?" "Boundaries are rules we set to protect ourselves from people who don't treat us with respect." Tyler thought about this. "So, we're setting a boundary with Grandma and Aunt Natalie?" "Yes, we are. And that's okay. It doesn't mean we don't love them. It just means we expect to be treated with kindness and respect, just like everyone else." That evening, the call started. Mom, Dad, various aunts and uncles. all delivering variations on. Be reasonable. Don't make a scene. Follow through with the venue contribution. I let most go to voicemail, but took Dad's. Randy, you know how your mother gets about these social events, he said, his voice the familiar mix of placating and dismissive. Just let this one go. We can have a separate family celebration after the honeymoon. Dad, do you understand what happened here? Mom and Natalie publicly uninvited your grandchildren from a family wedding, humiliating them in the process. Now their cousin is bullying them about it at school, and you want me to just let it go? You're blowing this out of proportion, he sighed. No one meant to hurt the kids. It's just that this wedding is very important for your sister's future. The Wilsons are influential people. More influential than your own grandchildren's emotional well-being? His silence was answer enough. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table with a notepad, my designer's brain organizing the chaos. I wrote, what we know. 1. My family excluded me and my children from the wedding in the cruelest way. 2. They still expect me to contribute $5,000. 3. This is part of a pattern of toxic behavior, not an isolated incident. 4. My children are being actively harmed. On the next page, what we don't know. 1. How much does James actually know? 2. What have Mom and Natalie told the Wilsons about us? 3. What's the real story with the venue payment? 4. Who else knows, and what have they been told? With these questions, I started investigating. First call, the Grand Pavilion at Lakeside Gardens. I identified myself as Natalie's sister, helping with details. I just wanted to confirm some information about the Thompson-Wilson wedding on the 21st. Of course, yes, here it is. Thompson-Wilson wedding, grand ballroom rental, garden ceremony, 200 guests. Great. Just double-checking the payment schedule. Has the final payment been made? The coordinator hesitated. I see the initial deposit was made 2 months ago, but the final payment is actually past due. We've sent several reminders. This was interesting. I was under the impression payment had been arranged. My contribution was meant to complete it. There's a note here about a partial payment from the sister of the bride, the coordinator confirmed, but we haven't received it. According to our contract, final payment is due 14 days before the event, this coming Friday. Without it, we can't guarantee the reservation. After thanking her, I processed this. The venue payment wasn't just an extra. It was critical, and they were counting on me for it, despite explicitly uninviting me. My next call was to Aunt Susan, Mom's younger sister, the family member most likely to give me straight answers. Aunt Susan, can I ask you something about Natalie's wedding? I need you to be honest. Of course, honey. I heard there was some drama about you not attending. Your mother said you were having some personal issues and thought it best to skip it. Her voice was carefully neutral. That's not true. They explicitly uninvited me and the kids. But what I want to know is what they've told James's family about us. Have you met the Wilsons? Susan's long pause. Yes, I met them at the engagement dinner. Eleanor Wilson is very concerned with appearances. During that dinner, your mother mentioned you only once. She said you were an artist living in another state. I live 20 minutes away from her house. I know. And when James asked if you had children, your mother changed the subject very quickly. I got the distinct impression that she's pretending you have a very different life than you actually do. A cold realization washed over me. They're ashamed of us. They're literally hiding our existence to impress these people. I think your mother sees this as Natalie's big chance to marry into the social circle she's always wanted, Susan said carefully. She doesn't want anything to complicate that narrative. And my children and I complicate the narrative. In her mind, yes. You know your mother, Randy, she's always been obsessed with appearances. Remember how she used to make us change clothes 3 times before visiting Grandma at the nursing home? After thanking her, I made one more call. My lawyer friend, Mike, who specialized in contract law. I explained the venue situation. If you never signed anything, you have no legal obligation, he assured me. A verbal promise of a gift doesn't constitute a binding agreement. What if they put my name on the contract without my knowledge? That would be problematic for them, not you. They can't obligate you to a contract you never signed, but it might create complications with the venue if they're expecting your payment. By the end of the day, I had a much clearer picture. My mother and sister had been counting on my financial contribution while simultaneously deciding I wasn't worthy of attending. They had effectively erased me from their carefully constructed family narrative to impress the Wilsons. And most disturbingly, they saw absolutely nothing wrong with any of this. As I tucked my children into bed, watching their innocent faces relaxed in sleep, a steely resolve formed. This wasn't just about a wedding invitation anymore. This was about teaching my children what it meant to have self-respect, to set healthy boundaries, and to recognize when relationships were damaging rather than nurturing. We deserve better, I whispered, kissing their foreheads. And I'm going to make sure we get it. The next morning, I woke with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The path forward wasn't about revenge or drama, but about justice, self-respect, and breaking unhealthy patterns. I opened my laptop and began organizing my thoughts. First, back to Mike, my lawyer friend. We met for coffee. Based on everything, you have no legal obligation, Mike confirmed. However, if they listed you as a partial payer on the contract without your signature, that could create complications for them with the venue. That's exactly what I suspect, I said. My mother has a habit of making commitments on other people's behalf. In that case, I'd recommend formally rescinding your offer in writing. Send an email to both your mother and sister, CC the venue, stating clearly that due to your exclusion from the event, you are withdrawing your previously offered contribution. Won't that make me look vindictive, like I'm trying to sabotage the wedding? Mike shook his head. It's not vindictive to withdraw financial support for an event you've been explicitly told not to attend. It's actually the logical consequence of their decision. With Mike's guidance, I drafted a clear, firm email to Mom and Natalie, CCing the venue coordinator. The message was professional, factual, no emotional language. I explained that as my presence and that of my children was not welcome, I was formally rescinding my offer to contribute. I wished them well and requested they not contact me further about financial contributions for an event we were prohibited from attending. After sending, I blocked both their numbers temporarily. I needed space to implement the rest of my plan without the emotional manipulation I knew would follow. Next, I focused on creating a special alternative day for me and my children. I wanted them to understand that while rejection hurts, we could choose joy. How would you guys feel about going to Adventure World on the 21st? I asked over dinner. They've opened that new waterslide section, Tyler. Their enthusiasm was immediate. Tickets weren't cheap, but I'd been saving. What better occasion than celebrating our worth as a family? Is that the same day as Aunt Natalie's wedding? Tyler asked, perceptive as ever. Yes, it is. I thought we could have our own special day while they have theirs. But why aren't we going to the wedding anymore? Emma asked, her small forehead wrinkled. I took a deep breath. Sometimes, Emma, people make choices that aren't very kind. Grandma and Aunt Natalie have made some choices that hurt our feelings. When that happens, it's okay to choose not to spend time with those people for a while. Did we do something bad? Her trembling lower lip nearly broke me. No, sweetie. You didn't do anything wrong at all. This is about them, not us. And instead of feeling sad, we're going to have our own amazing day of fun. As they discussed rides, I reflected on how these conversations were teaching them crucial lessons. Love shouldn't be conditional. True family accepts you. And it's okay to step back from relationships that make you feel inadequate. Over the next days, I ignored the mounting voicemails and messages. Most pressured me to reconsider my stance on the payment, with increasing guilt tripping. Dad appealed to loyalty. Aunt suggested I was stubborn. Natalie accused me of trying to ruin the biggest day of her life. I let them all go unanswered, focusing on my work, my children, and the small community of genuine friends who rallied around us. Zoe organized a movie night. My neighbor, Barbara, brought cookies and offered extra babysitting. My clients, sensing something was wrong, sent thoughtful messages. During this radio silence, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. Randy, this is James, Natalie's fiancé. I hope you don't mind me calling directly. I hesitated. Hello, James. This is unexpected. I'm sure it is. Look, I'll get right to the point. There seems to be some confusion about the wedding guest list. Natalie told me you didn't want to attend, but then I heard from the venue that there's an issue with the payment you'd offered. I'm honestly confused. The genuine bewilderment in his voice suggested he truly had no idea. James, I'm going to tell you something that might be difficult to hear. I never said I didn't want to attend. In fact, until last week, my children and I were under the impression we were not only invited but participating. Tyler was supposed to be a junior groomsman, and Emma a flower girl. What? But Natalie said. She told me you weren't comfortable with formal events and preferred not to come. She said your kids had some behavioral issues that made large gatherings difficult. The hurt must have been evident in my silence because he quickly continued, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have repeated that. I'm just trying to understand. The truth is, James, my mother and sister explicitly uninvited us via group text. They said my children and I make things awkward and would interfere with having a perfect day. They still expected me to contribute $5,000 toward the venue despite uninviting us. That can't be right, he said, but the uncertainty in his voice suggested he was questioning his narrative. I can forward you the entire text exchange if you'd like. Would you? I'd really appreciate that. This doesn't sound like the Natalie I know, but, well, there have been some strange tensions around the wedding planning that I haven't fully understood. After our call, I forwarded the entire humiliating text thread, along with screenshots of follow-up messages pressuring me to still pay. It wasn't about creating problems. It was about bringing truth to a situation shrouded in lies. James called back 30 minutes later, his voice noticeably shaken. I don't even know what to say. I had no idea this was happening. My parents have been asking about meeting you and your kids, and Natalie kept making excuses. I just assumed you were busy. Or maybe some minor family tension, not this. I'm sorry you're finding out this way, I said sincerely. For what it's worth, I think Natalie genuinely cares about you. She just also cares tremendously about impressions and status, a value she inherited directly from our mother. I need to talk to her about this. And my parents. They would be horrified if they knew family members were being excluded like this. That's not how we operate. After hanging up, I felt a strange mix of vindication and sadness. I hadn't set out to create drama, but the truth had a way of surfacing. Whatever happened next was out of my hands. I had been honest, set appropriate boundaries, and was focusing on my children. For the next 5 days, silence. After days of constant pressure, it was disconcerting, but peaceful. I finalized our adventure world plans, packing snacks, sunscreen, excited talks about rides. As the wedding day approached, I felt stronger, more centered. The initial shock and hurt had transformed into quiet determination. This painful experience had forced me to confront and dismantle the dysfunctional patterns of my family. You seem different, Mom. Tyler observed the night before our park visit. Not sad anymore. I am different, I agreed. Sometimes hard things help us grow stronger, like how plants need storms to make their roots dig deeper. I smiled. Exactly like that. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be an adventure. The morning of Natalie's wedding dawned bright and clear. I woke before my alarm, a mix of emotions swirling despite my efforts at detachment. Somewhere, Natalie was preparing to become a wife. Mom was fussing over details, creating the perfect illusion for the Wilsons. And here I was, choosing a different path entirely. I pushed those thoughts aside as I heard excited footsteps. Mom, is it time to go to Adventure World? Emma burst into my room, already in her swimsuit, though inside out and backwards. Tyler followed, calmer, but his eyes gleamed. It's going to be 87 degrees and sunny, perfect for water slides. I laughed, helping Emma. Let's have breakfast first, then we can head out. The park opens at 10. As we ate Mickey Mouse pancakes, a special occasion tradition, my phone was deliberately off, tucked away. Today wasn't about what we were missing. It was about what we were choosing to create together. Adventure World lived up to its name. We spent the morning conquering daring rides, Tyler leading with newfound confidence, Emma squealing with delight. We took silly photos, indulged in overpriced theme park food, played every game. During a rest in the shade, Tyler looked up. This is better than a boring wedding anyway, right, Mom? I considered my answer. Different experiences are valuable in different ways, Tyler. Weddings can be beautiful celebrations of love and family. But today, this is exactly where we're meant to be, having fun together. As the afternoon progressed, Emma won a stuffed unicorn. Tyler conquered his fear of the tallest water slide, emerging with a triumphant grin. I took dozens of photos, capturing their joy, our connection. By late afternoon, exhaustion set in. Emma's steps dragged. Even Tyler admitted he was tired. We headed home, stopping for ice cream. It wasn't until the kids were settled with a movie that I retrieved my phone and turned it on. Immediately, it buzzed. 15 missed calls, 23 texts, 7 voicemails. The first, from Mom at 10:30 a.m., was surprisingly composed. Randy, I hope you'll reconsider your position about the venue payment. The wedding starts at 4, and we need to resolve this before then. Call me back immediately. The second, from noon, had an edge of panic. Randy, this is getting ridiculous. The venue manager is saying there's an issue with the final payment. Call me back right now. By the third, at 1:15 p.m., Mom's composure had completely crumbled. Randy, please, you have to help us. The venue manager is threatening to cancel everything if the final payment isn't made by 3 o'clock. I don't know what you said to them, but they're insisting the contract listed you as a partial payer, and they can't proceed without your payment or signature removing you from the agreement. Please, Natalie is in tears. You can't ruin her wedding like this. The remaining messages grew increasingly desperate, culminating in a sobbing Natalie begging me to just sign the stupid paper or pay the money, because the venue manager was completely unreasonable, and the photographer and florist were already there setting up. I sat down at my kitchen table, absorbing this unexpected turn. I had sent that email to clarify my position, not to actively create problems. I'd assumed Mom would just cover the gap. After making sure the kids were engrossed, I called the venue directly. The manager explained that my mother had listed me as a responsible party on the contract, creating a legal complication when I explicitly withdrew my offer. We try to be flexible, she explained, but when no payment was forthcoming and no amended agreement was signed, we had to follow our contract terms. We couldn't hold the space without full payment. Has the situation been resolved? I asked. Not to my knowledge. The last update I received was that they were attempting to secure an alternative venue for a scaled-down version of the reception. The ceremony was moved to the church that was originally just for the service. After thanking her, I sat in silence. I hadn't intended to disrupt the wedding itself, only to establish boundaries. Yet, it seemed Mom's presumption, putting my name on legal documents without my consent, had created exactly the chaos she had claimed to be avoiding by excluding us. At 7:30 p.m., after getting the children bathed and into pajamas, I finally returned my mother's calls. She answered immediately. It's a bit late to call now, isn't it? Her voice was brittle with exhaustion and barely contained fury. I've been busy all day with the kids. I just got your messages. What happened with the wedding? As if you don't know, your little stunt nearly ruined everything. We had to move the reception to the church basement at the last minute. Half the floral arrangements couldn't be transferred. The cake arrived at the original venue and had to be rushed across town. The photographer charged extra for the venue change. Eleanor Wilson was horrified by the disorganization. I'm sorry things were complicated, I said carefully. But I don't understand why you put my name on a contract without my permission. That created this problem, not my withdrawal of a gift I was never obligated to give in the first place. Gift? This was your sister's wedding. Family helps family. Family also doesn't exclude family from important life events via group text. The line went quiet. Is that what this was about? Revenge because your feelings were hurt? No, Mom. This was about respecting myself and my children enough to not financially support people who treat us as embarrassments. This was about showing my kids that it's not okay to let people use you while simultaneously pushing you aside. Oh, that's rich coming from you. Always so righteous about your choices. Never mind how they affect everyone else. Do you have any idea the damage you've caused? James's parents left early. They said they'd never seen such a disorganized event. Before I could respond, I heard Natalie's voice. You vindictive bitch, my sister hissed when she got on the line. You couldn't stand that I was having something special, could you? You had to make it all about you and your issues. Natalie, I didn't create this situation. All I did was withdraw financial support from an event I was explicitly told not to attend. The consequences came from Mom putting my name on legal documents without my knowledge or consent. You could have just paid it anyway, or signed their stupid form. You knew how important this day was to me, and you knew how hurtful it was to uninvite your niece and nephew from being in your wedding party. You knew how humiliating it was to exclude your own sister via group text. You made your choices, and I made mine. The conversation devolved, Natalie alternating between tearful accusations and angry threats. I remained calm, repeatedly bringing the focus back to the actual sequence of events. After hanging up, I was surprised to receive a text message from James. I want you to know that none of this was your fault. What happened today opened my eyes to some dynamics I hadn't fully recognized. Thank you for your honesty. I hope someday we can start fresh as family. The next day, social media was conspicuously quiet. Typically, Mom and Natalie would have been posting professional photos with crafted captions about their perfect day. Their silence spoke volumes about how far reality had diverged. 3 days later, Eleanor Wilson, James's mother, called. "Randy, this is Eleanor Wilson. James gave me your number." "Not at all, Mrs. Wilson. How can I help you?" "Please call me Eleanor. I wanted to reach out personally to invite you and your children to brunch this Sunday. James has told us so much about his new niece and nephew, and we're eager to meet you all." I was momentarily speechless. "That's very kind of you. We'd be happy to come." "Wonderful. And Randy, I want you to know that James has explained the circumstances surrounding the wedding. My husband and I were quite disturbed to learn how you and your children were treated. That's not the kind of family values we raised our son with." After arranging details, I sat in stunned silence. Somehow, in attempting to erase me from their perfect family narrative, my mother and sister had instead revealed the true dysfunction that had been lurking beneath the surface all along. The brunch with the Wilsons was a pivotal moment. Harold and Eleanor welcomed us into their spacious, comfortable home with genuine warmth. Unlike the intimidating elitist Mom had portrayed, they were down to earth. "Tyler, James tells me you're quite the baseball player," Harold said, showing him signed memorabilia. "Emma, would you like to see the dollhouse that was mine when I was a little girl?" Eleanor asked. "I've kept it all these years, hoping someday I'd have a granddaughter to share it with." As the children explored, Eleanor joined me on the patio. "I want to be direct," she said. "What your mother told us about you and what we've learned ourselves are very different things." "What exactly did she tell you?" I asked, finally able to confirm my suspicions. "That you lived out of state, that you had made lifestyle choices the family found difficult, that you struggled with stability." Her diplomatic phrasing couldn't hide the implication. "And now I see a devoted mother raising 2 wonderful children. James speaks highly of your work as a designer. And most importantly, I see someone who had the strength to stand up for herself and her children in a difficult situation." "It wasn't about revenge," I said, needing her to understand. "It was about not allowing my children to internalize the message that they weren't good enough." "I understand that better than you might think," Eleanor said, surprising me. "My own mother was similar to yours. Appearances meant everything. I wasn't the daughter she wanted either." That conversation marked the beginning of an unexpected alliance. While my own mother maintained a chilly distance, the Wilsons began regularly including us in family gatherings. Emma and Tyler developed a genuine friendship with their new uncle, James, who had a talent for connecting with children. In the months that followed, I committed to therapy, finally unpacking the years of conditional love and subtle undermining that had shaped my self-perception. My therapist helped me understand that the wedding incident hadn't created the dysfunction. It had merely exposed decades-old patterns. "Your mother has narcissistic tendencies," she explained. "And your sister learned early on that emulating your mother's values was the path to approval. Neither of them is likely to fundamentally change without their own committed therapy." With this understanding, I began establishing clearer boundaries. I declined Sunday dinners that always devolved into criticism. I limited phone calls with Mom to 15 minutes, redirecting when she started disparaging me or the kids. I filtered information carefully, sharing only what felt safe. The children flourished. Tyler's teacher commented on his increased confidence. Emma's anxiety about being good enough faded, replaced by natural enthusiasm. My business grew as I redirected energy from family drama into my work, securing larger corporate contracts, giving us greater financial stability. When Thanksgiving approached, I braced myself for the usual negotiations. To my surprise, James called. "We're hosting at our place this year," he said. "Eleanor suggested we start some new traditions. We'd really love for you and the kids to join us." "What about my mother and father?" I asked carefully. "They've been invited, too, but with clear expectations about behavior." "Eleanor had a rather direct conversation with your mother about how family members are to be treated in our home." The Thanksgiving gathering was tense at times, but ultimately healing. Mom was noticeably subdued. Dad seemed relieved by the structure Eleanor subtly imposed. Natalie, 6 months into marriage, and faced with her husband's obvious affection for his niece and nephew, made awkward but genuine attempts to connect with Tyler and Emma. After the holiday, Natalie reached out. Can we meet for coffee? She asked. We sat in a quiet corner of a local cafe, both uncharacteristically nervous. I'm not good at this, she began. Admitting when. I've been wrong isn't exactly a skill Mom taught either of us. No, it wasn't, I agreed. The wedding was a disaster, she said bluntly. Not because of the venue change, but because I let Mom convince me that appearances matter more than actual relationships. James was really upset with me afterward in ways I didn't expect. How so? He said he didn't recognize the person I became during the wedding planning. That excluding you and the kids showed a side of me he found disturbing. We've been in couples counseling since then. I was surprised by her candor. That couldn't have been easy to hear. It wasn't, but he wasn't wrong. She twisted her napkin nervously. I'm not asking for forgiveness right away. I know what we did was cruel. I just want to know if there's a way forward, eventually. Tyler and Emma are the only niece and nephew I'll ever have, and I've been a terrible aunt. Healing takes time, I said carefully. I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but it needs to be different than before. My priority is protecting my children from the kind of treatment we've all normalized for too long. Over the following months, Natalie made consistent, if sometimes awkward, efforts. She came to Tyler's school play. She remembered Emma's birthday with a thoughtfully selected art set. Small steps, but meaningful ones. My mother proved less capable of change. She maintained I had overreacted, deliberately caused problems. When I held firm to my boundaries, she adopted a martyr position, telling extended family I was keeping her grandchildren away. Eventually, I accepted that my relationship with my mother might never be what I had hoped for. Instead of trying to earn her approval, I focused on breaking the cycle with my own children. They would grow up knowing their worth didn't depend on meeting impossible standards or fitting someone else's image of perfection. The family you're born into isn't always the family that nurtures you. I explained to Tyler one evening after a difficult call with Mom. Sometimes we have to create our own chosen family of people who love us as we are. Like Aunt Zoe and Miss Barbara next door? He asked. Exactly. And now Uncle James and the Wilsons, too. And we're a family, the three of us, Emma added, with the simple wisdom of childhood. The best family. As I hugged them close, I reflected on the painful journey that had led us to this point of greater health and authenticity. The wedding text, initially so devastating, had ultimately been the catalyst for profound change. By standing up for myself and my children, I had broken generations of toxic patterns and created space for genuine connections. Forgiveness, I was learning, didn't require reconciliation with those committed to harmful behavior. It meant releasing the anger that tied me to the pain while maintaining boundaries. It meant acknowledging who people truly were, rather than clinging to fantasies. Most importantly, it meant teaching my children, through example, that love shouldn't hurt, that family should be a source of support, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away from relationships that diminish, rather than enhance, your life. Today, 2 years after that fateful wedding text, our lives have found a new equilibrium. My relationship with Natalie continues to slowly heal. James has become the kind of uncle my children deserve. The Wilsons have embraced us as genuine family members. My father makes occasional efforts to connect on his own terms. And my mother remains at a carefully managed distance, allowed limited access under specific conditions. It isn't the family story I would have written for myself as a young girl, but it's authentic, honest, and ultimately healthier than the facade we maintained for so many years. So, I've told you my story, but I'm genuinely curious. Have you ever had to walk away from family members who just couldn't see your worth, or who consistently put you down? How did you find the courage to do it? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. Thanks for watching. Take care.